Hey folks, it's Frederik from the FWX podcast. I want to continue with my coverage of the Mission Impossible franchise, and we're now in our second cluster of movies, and I'm gonna talk about. I'm gonna get this picture here for a moment. Ghost Protocol, and then Rogue Nation, and Fallout. And of course, I have to start with this one, Ghost Protocol, which is number 4 in this franchise. And I would argue that Ghost Protocol is, in my opinion, one of the best movies of Mission Impossible. Because I don't know if you heard this in me talking about those 3 first movies. They haven't really aged all that well when it comes visually. The story is grand, it's cool, it's fun, it's all of action with interesting characters and people that we've seen in other things. But they stand aside when it comes to these new ones since the 2010s. So I'm gonna talk here about the next one, number 4. Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. And I'm also going to mention here that it's a bit of a soft reboot here because, well, of course we get the talented Tom Cruise back here, but there's a new team basically here of old faces and new faces. And so let's start with this movie. Also, I'm gonna give you the disclaimer first. I might flub words, that tends to happen. I might also swear, sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. We'll see if it happens. Also, occasionally I might have a weird moment, a pause basically, where I, see, it just happened. So, I'm trying to get up basically to gather my thoughts, and they haven't completely come out. So that's what I mean with those little kind of breaks. Okay. Also, sometimes I do go on a little bit of a tangent or kind of lose my train of thought. That tends to happen too. So now that is all out of the way, let's start with this episode about Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol. And I'm gonna do this by way at the hand with some interesting pictures, including a picture of the cast right here. Here's everyone that should be important. I hope I don't have to look somebody up, but we'll see if that happens or not. Okay, so let's start this. 1, 2. And so we get a little bit of a prologue in this movie where things start to happen in Budapest in Eastern Europe. And we meet IMF agent Trevor Hannaway, who in this movie is played by Josh Holloway, who you might know from Lost. There's also a series I like to watch when it was out. It's called Intelligence, about an artificial intelligence chip that is in a guy who is an agent for an intelligence agency in the United States. And so Josh Holloway plays Trevor Hannaway. And he is trying to lead a mission in Budapest. But unfortunately, as you see in the movie, he is killed. He is assassinated by Sabine Moreau, who in this movie is played by the very talented Lea Seydoux, a French actress. And she is after a man named Cobalt, and she is stealing Russian nuclear launch codes. And she wants to sell those launch codes to the person called Cobalt. And the following scenes we get is of a new team, this new team that I just talked about, that kind of soft reboots the franchise. And this new team has an operation where they have to go and extract Ethan Hunt, who is in a prison in Russia, in Moscow. And they also have to get somebody else out named Bogdan, who is played by... I got him right here, and I hope I say his name correctly. Mirai Grbic. Mirai Grbic. Okay, and that's this guy who plays Bogdan. And so, this new team, it's a two-man team at the moment. And these are two that we have met. Well, one person that we have met before from the first 3 movies, and that is our guy Simon Pegg as Benji Dunn, who is now a field agent. And also Paula Patton, who plays Jane Carter in this movie. And they're a duo. They've been sent to extract Ethan from this prison in Moscow. And so they also, interesting hint that we later get to know, but I'll already say this here, that Jane is actually Hanaway's girlfriend. And so they get a new mission. We see Ethan in one of those boxed payphones where he gets new information about trying to get to Cobalt. And they have to do something that seems not just extreme, but incredibly dangerous. They have to go and infiltrate the Kremlin. Of course, this is fiction, so I'm saying this just in case. Alright. And they show off again what the IMF is known for doing, and that is unconventional ways of spying. And so Ethan and Benji go in traditional Russian uniform, and they're talking to each other as they're getting in. And Benji's trying to make small talk, while Ethan is pure mission focused, of course. And they're getting in, and they go into the lower places, the records, basically the archives. And Ethan has, like I said, he's using a thing that shows off just what the IMF is. He's using one of those face mask things that I've talked about before in the first 3 movies. And he's trying to portray a Russian military man of rank. I think it was a general. And as they're there, they come across this person who is labeled Cobalt as his code name. And this person is played by Michael Nyqvist. No, sorry. No, wait, I think I'm right. Just a second. Oh, yeah, I'm right. Thing is, on the picture, it says the official name. So, Michael Nyqvist plays the person codenamed Cobalt, but his real name, as I will later be talking about again, is Kurt Hendricks. and they don't know that yet, but they walk into him, and he blows the team's cover as they're inside the Kremlin. And he has just gotten something from the same place, from the records from the archives of the Kremlin in the movie. And he manages to escape. And the team also manages to escape, as they are now sure that he is trying to... There's a turn of phrase here. He's covering his tracks. And he has a bomb. And he uses it to destroy the Kremlin, to cover his tracks. And Benji has gotten out just a bit sooner, but Ethan comes to in a hospital, and here he finds himself cuffed to the bed that he is in, because he is arrested by Anatoly Sidorov, who is an agent of the SVR, which is one of the main intelligence agencies in Russia. And he is played in this movie by this guy, Vladimir Mashkov. That's him right here. And he's blamed for the bombing. And he has actually a recording of the communication between the team and this Kobold character. And so Ethan and the team are inexplicably blamed for the bombing. But Ethan manages to escape. He gets the handcuffs off, and he finds himself leaning against the side wall of the hospital, where he's trying to find a good way of getting out, because he's a few stories up. And Anatoly again is watching him, seeing how he's gonna get out of this. And there's an ambulance driving away in that moment. And Anatoly is also, by the way, smoking in that moment, as he is watching how Ethan is handling with getting off a few-storied building. And Ethan gets his belt loose from his pants. He ziplines off a cord and onto this ambulance and harshly onto the cobbled grounds of Moscow. And so Ethan goes on the run in Moscow, and he wanders around. He steals a jacket to protect his identity, and he finds himself in a car, and he meets the IMF secretary, who happens to be in Moscow. And also in this car is the head analyst for the secretary, who's played in this movie for the first time by actor Jeremy Renner, who you will also know from The Avengers, of course, and from other big franchises. Like he played an interesting role from the Bourne franchise. Maybe I will talk about that soon, or not, we'll see. And so Jeremy Renner plays William Brandt, the head analyst for the secretary in this movie. And Brandt identifies who this kobold figure is, because Stephen has made a description, a little drawing of the man on a napkin, and they identify this person as the guy that I've talked about a moment ago, Kurt Hendricks, who is a strategist, who is a really, really smart guy, who has some very nefarious ideas, and he is looking for nuclear war between America and Russia. And the two of them, William Brandt and Ethan, determined that he did this deliberately, so they can set up the two nations against each other. And the thing that Cobalt or Hendrix get out of the Kremlin was a launch control device. And here we have the secretary. I think we have a picture of the secretary. No. I'm gonna look that up for a second. Just a second, folks. So I don't have a picture of him, but the person playing him is Tom Wilkinson, a very well-known English actor. I'm gonna check for a moment if I've seen something that he has been in, like this movie, of course. He has a ton of accolades. Oh, yeah. I would have seen him in, as I see here, The Patriots, and another movie with Tom Cruise, Valkyrie, and also The Ghostwriter. So, very well-known actor that plays the secretary in this movie. And the secretary, in fact, says something to them that is very important. In fact, that the US president has now initiated the Ghost Protocol, which is to disavow the IMF. And to give you a bit more information about spycraft, I want to say that in spy terms, a ghost is someone whose identity is unknown. And so, in fact, I want to briefly say for a moment that from the fourth movie in, we get different sets of subtitles which are important to the plot. So Ghost Protocol is specifically to this movie where the IMF is completely disavowed. So they can basically do off-the-books missions, which is yet another spy term that is used for, I'm gonna say, unknown wet work. And I just put myself into this to explain another espionage term. Wet work is yet another word for saying abroad activities, basically. Is to do the dirty work. Yeah. So, back to the story of this movie. So, US President has initiated the Ghost Protocol, which disavows the IMF. But the secretary does order Ethan to continue the pursuit for Cobalt. And as they're driving around in the car of the secretary, the SVR, the Russian intelligence agency, catches up with them, and the lead agent, Anatoly Sidorov, that I've talked about before now, ambushes him with his men, and in this incident, the secretary is shot and killed, which gets William and Ethan and the now dead secretary into the river that flows through Moscow, and they escape. Ethan and William Brandt escape, and they go to one of those what's the name for that kind of location, like where all the trains gather at night when all the anyway, so the place where all the trains are at night. And so Ethan and Brandt regroup with Jane and Benji in one of those trains, which is actually a really state-of-the-art kind of interior with all the necessary accommodations, like a small but very handy weaponry, an armory, but then also bedding for them. And so they learn and talk to each other, and they make up a plan to get at someone else, which is an associate of Kurt Hendricks, aka Cobalt, and this associate is called Wistrom. And I have a picture of him here. This man right here, he's played by Samuli Edelman, and based on his name, I'm assuming he is not American. He's basically like a large henchman who can really fight off a lot of people. Anyway, so they're planning on infiltrating the meeting that Hendricks, his associate Wistrom, has with the person we met at the start of this movie, Sabine Moreau, played by Lea Seydoux. And they're gonna do this in Dubai at the biggest building on the planet, the Burj Khalifa, where Wistrom is gonna buy the stolen launch codes that Moreau has. And so the team goes to Dubai and to the Burj Khalifa, where they have gotten their own suites, their rooms. And so here we get a bit more of the plan as they are hoping to intercept the codes as they fake a meeting between the other parties. And it's apparently a secret of how all these people look alike, so Ethan and Brandt are gonna pose as Wistrom and somebody else that they have gotten hold of, Leonid Lysenko, who is a cryptographer. I believe I have a picture of him. Yes, it's this man right here. He's played by Ivan Shvedov, and who can make sure that the codes are authentic. And so Ethan and Brand are gonna pose as Wistrom and Leonid to get the codes from Moreau, while Jane, played by Paula Patton, right here. So I'm gonna say it again. So the team is going to make a different meeting, a fake one, while using the other party, and that will lose their advantage so they can have the advantage. Yeah, so Jane is gonna pose as Moreau, as it is unclear to both other parties of who looks like what exactly. And they do this once again through the incredible state-of-the-art technology that the team has. Unfortunately, the device that they normally use to make those very authentic kind of face masks that they usually do, it doesn't work. It actually malfunctions, and so that is not possible anymore. Because that was actually their initial idea, to use those kind of face masks. So they're reduced to doing it face to face, apart from each other. Ethan and Brandt posing as Wistrom and Leonid, and Jane as Moreau to the others. But they do something else though, in that they have a different kind of technology which allows for a very thin kind of lens for the eyes that then immediately can have a connection that has a connection. I'm gonna rephrase. So they have another piece of technology which is like a little thing that you can use for your eyes, but that can make a picture of what you see if you blink twice. And so Brand is trying to use that during their meeting. But then what happens is that they learn that listener can immediately authenticate the message. And so Brand has that thing in his eye, so they can make a print of the authentication. And as the real Wistrom and Lysander walk out, Wistrom double crosses Lysander and kills him. And we have this torpor chaos moment where everything becomes clear, and this is where everyone is going after each other, especially even after Wistrom, while Benji and Brand are trying to keep Lysander alive, while Jane goes after Moreau for killing her boyfriend, Hanaway, previously played by Josh Holloway. And so Jane intercepts Moreau. By the way, I'm missing something here. So Benji tries to come over and get the payment that Moreau was having, as he is disguised by someone working for the hotel, for the Burj Khalifa. And as Moreau is getting everything together, she attacks Benji. And in that moment, Jane breaks her promise that she had made to Ethan earlier, that she would not kill Moreau, as Moreau is a potential asset to get more intelligence. And so they fight. And by the way, before I go any further, there's a crazy scene that happens during the planning where they need to get the information from the Burj Khalifa itself, from the security system. And this is an iconic shot that we see in the movie and in the poster. I think I have it. Yeah. In the franchise poster right here. You can see it right here. In fact, Ethan needs to go up and up to the security control room of the Burj Khalifa, and he goes up the building with the technology that they have, that they got from the train, which is like this flimsy kind of gloves that activate through, I believe it's electricity or the internet, something like that. So, anyway, so they're powered by an energy source, these gloves, and Ethan uses them to climb up the side of the Burj Khalifa, which is crazy in itself. And then Ethan gets into the control room, and he gets access to the system so they can control the CCTV cameras inside the hotel room, so they can follow everything in between, which is what Benji was doing while he was getting the payment that Moreau had before. So I needed to say that because it's an iconic shot, and I needed. No, actually, the craziest stuff hasn't even happened yet at that point, because Ethan needs to get back to the room where they are planning everything. And sorry, he leaps out of that building at an incredibly high point on one of the tallest places in the earth. And he luckily gets out of there. He gets to the floor. And we see yet another crazy stunt that they do in this movie, where Tom Cruise is hanging out of the building as Ethan Hunt with I can't even describe what it is that he is using, but kind of yeah. So he's hanging out. He's trying to get back to the room where they're planning everything, and he does some crazy shit just to get back in the room. And he jumps. First he hits the window alone, which must be painful as fuck. But they managed to get him as Brandt, Jeremy Renner's character, is hanging out of the window himself. And so they quickly catch him, luckily enough. They get him back into the room, and they're... So that was all part of the planning, basically. And we see Benji get back into the room, and there's this moment of levity and humor as he's like, oh, this is crazy that we need to do this. Benji is the English IMF agent, by the way. And they're just perplexed because of what the crazy shit that they just had to do. Especially Ethan, being a crazy ass guy that he is, hanging out of stuff and all of that, doing crazy shit. And so there's this moment of levity between the four of them. And that's where we follow up with the meeting between everyone, as the device for the face mask has just malfunctioned, and we get to the meetings and to the complete chaos that comes from it, as they all realize that, oh shit, this is not gonna work anymore. And so Jane breaks that earlier promise that she has made, that she would not do anything to Moreau, and in fact kicks the woman out of the window that they had to get out, and kills her in doing so. And so that gets us back to the movie, and I'm gonna read further. And okay, so Moreau had realized that this was all a big setup, and so it's absolute torpor. But as I said, Jane catches her and kicks her out of the building, killing her. Meanwhile, Ethan is trying to get Wistrom back. But Ethan himself is also being pursued by that SVR agent that has been behind him. And we get, by the way, at this point, there are a lot of running scenes in this franchise. And we get the first one here as Ethan is getting outside of the Burj Khalifa and pursuing Wistrom into a sandstorm that was already on its way, but is now in the city of Dubai. And they run through it. And here we get to reveal that Wistrom has been doing an IMF technique all on his own, and it turns out that he was actually Hendrix the whole time, and he manages to escape. And so Ethan returns back to the room, by the way, exhausted as hell, I'm assuming, because there's a lot of running in this movie. And he is somewhat back to being in comfort, and this whole time as they're working in the team, they've seen that Brent isn't just any analyst, but he also has some fighting skills. And there's this little confrontation between Ethan and Brent, where Brent shows off some really advanced fighting skills, and Ethan decides to leave for the moment and go and find a new way of getting Wistrom and Hendricks. And while Ethan is away, William Brandt finally admits why exactly he's an analyst and not a field agent, and it's because he was one of the men guarding Ethan's wife, Julia, but he failed to protect her, as she was actually... there was a bounty on her in something, in a moment we don't see on screen. And so Brandt effectively admits why he's no longer a field agent. And as that comes to a close, as Brandt says this to Jane and to Benji, we see that Ethan has gotten a hold back of Bogdan, who is with an arms dealer in Dubai. And I have a picture of that too. Of that person. This guy here. Ilya Volok, who plays a guy named The Fog, who is an arms dealer, and he's in Dubai. And there Ethan gets the new information that Hendricks, aka Cobalt, is actually planning to use missiles from an old Soviet military satellite. And there's some extra information that the Fog tells to Ethan, and that this satellite is actually owned by a media tycoon from India, Brezhnev, who is played by this actor right here, Anil Kapoor. And with that information, Ethan leaves and goes back to the group. And shortly after this, the arms dealer also gives the same information to the SVR, which leads the group to India, to Mumbai. And here we get some interesting and also funny moments between the team, where they all have a code name different from each other. And there's some funny Uranus joke. And the guys are looking out for everything. And Benji and Brandt have this plan of doing something really, really good, but in a stupid way. And it is with a kind of, I will say, like a skateboard version of a Roomba, basically. And Brandt gets himself into the system, and he... what's the name? I need... what would be the right name for... disabling the security system of this place. And it's just funny moments between the two of them, as this device, this Roomba-like skateboard, is based on magnets, and Brandt is wearing like Kevlar, but then with magnets, which holds him up so he doesn't get cooked by the overheating apparatus that the security system has. And while that is happening with the two guys and trying to get the security system offline, Jane is seducing the owner of the satellite, Nav. Seducing in a flirty way, of course. And she manages to overpower him, as this Nav guy seems to get very horny when he wants to do some dangerous things to her. But she overpowers him, she gets the code, and that leads the team to pursue Hendrix, who is also in Mumbai with his henchman Wistrom, as Nav has a broadcast station there. And so we get a cool chase scene between the guys, Ethan and Wistrom and Hendrix. And I'm gonna say for a moment, there's this moment during the chase where Ethan, Tom Cruise, slides over a smaller kind of car. And, well, I'm just saying this because it's your usual foot chase, but in a little bit of a different kind of way, because, well, this franchise is known for doing a lot of stunts. So that's why I'm saying this. This must have been another less dangerous stunt to do, of course. But anyway, let's continue. And so all four of them get there to this broadcast station. And as Hendrix is there, he sends orders to a Russian nuclear submarine to launch missiles at San Francisco. And while he is doing that, his henchman Wistrom is sabotaging the station so that the team cannot get in there, but they do get in there. And the three of them, Benji, Brent, and Jane, are trying to repair the station while Ethan is going after Hendrix, after Cobalt. And there's this crazy fight again with Hendrix and Ethan. And it's clear in those scenes that Hendrix is, if not a bit older, about as old as Ethan is. And the crazy scenes between the two of them as they're in like a garage of some kind. Or not, more like a kind of station where you have cars stand out like a display basically, and there's different systems, and they're going up and off of a thing that is going up in a spiral, and we get a lot of cool action scenes here between the two of them. But ultimately that leads to Hendrix jumping off a high place, and he falls to the ground, and Ethan follows him, driving a car off a display set onto the lowest floor so he can get to the launch device. Luckily, he is not killed like Hendrix is, in an effort to keep the control. And we cut back to the team as Benji and Brent are trying to take out Wistrom, and Brent finds himself in a fight with Wistrom, but is relieved to find it a short fight as Benji shoots Wistrom dead, while Jane is reconnecting the system, which leads to Ethan at the bottom of this display for cars, where he punches the stable. I'm gonna talk about something for a moment. You know, this kind of suitcases you sometimes see in movies where you need to punch in launch codes and all of that. So Hendrix was holding one of those as he was falling, and so the thing fell next to him, and he is absolutely dying in that moment. And we see him see his work come undone as Ethan, now with the connection restored, disables this device and actually, for the first time in the franchise, yells out, "Mission accomplished." And Hendrix is, as I was saying, dying, but he witnesses this punch to the disable button on the inside of the suitcase, and as Ethan punches it, he sees how fruitless everything was, and he dies. And then we find our SVR, Captain Sidorov, who sees all of this and the result of everything, and he realizes that the IMF was actually very, very innocent of what happened at the Kremlin. And that gives us an end scene with the team in Seattle, where Ethan has assembled them so they can get another mission, and they meet Luford Stickle, who's only at the very end of this movie. Again, he is played by Ving Rhames, and so Benji and Carter walk away with their new mission, listening to it. And here William Brandt confesses to Ethan about what had happened, and that he is deeply sorry about it, about his failure to protect Julia. But Ethan actually reveals to William that everything is alright, and that all that happened with William was actually staged, so that Julia could get a new identity, so she could live far and safely away from Ethan, so she can live a proper, normal life. And we get moments in this, at the end of this movie, where you see Julia, played by Michelle Monaghan, as she's outside with a couple of friends in the hospital, enjoying everything around her and the moment. And they gave Ethan the ability to infiltrate that prison to find Bogdan, actually. And as that is coming to its end, Brandt accepts all of this and accepts his mission too. And that leaves all of them, all the team members, once again in a good place, as all of these movies usually do. Well, up until this point. And we get a last moment as Julia looks at Ethan from far away, and she smiles as she's now able to live her life free of any harm. And that is where this movie ends. There's where Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol ends. And so that's a whole mouthful. And this is also the end of the episode, so thank you very much for sticking with me. Thanks for watching and listening to this episode of the podcast. And I hope that you like and subscribe, that you maybe comment something positive, and you can also share this video with your friends, family, and people you know from work, and others too online. And I want to thank you for all of that. I'm going to talk about the next movie in the next episode of the podcast. So thank you very much for all of that, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya.